Let's get ready to rumble! Hey, it's Melissa from the Center of the Saints.
And I'm Allison Kane.
Today we are talking about wrestling with God.
Yeah, we hear that a lot as Christians.
Yeah.
It can be one of those, I think, kind of Christianese terms.
When you gave this topic to me, I was sort of confused. So I can't wait to hear you explain this.
Well, what do you think about when you hear the word wrestle? We'll start there.
Okay, so like I'm thinking WWE. You know, you're coming off that top rope and you're gonna clothesline somebody and get them down on the mat.
Yeah.
It's all sweaty.
All sweaty, those tight uniforms.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about high school wrestling mostly. And, I was actually, interesting fun fact, I was the wrestling manager in middle school.
Oh man, I thought you were gonna say the girl that like holds the numbers up, like the ring girl. You should totally be the ring girl.
Oh my gosh, no. I was so awkward. They would have never hired me for that in middle school. No, but I did know how to keep the books.
So what made you do that?
You know what? I wish I could remember. I don't know. I probably had a crush on one of the wrestlers.
Okay, I'm like, there's got to be some.
There's got to be some story, and it probably seemed like fun activity to do. I don't know. I would travel with the team, and they would be like in their garbage bags, sweating,
Oh.
to get their weight down.
Yeah.
It's not healthy, but yeah, probably a boy. I'm sure. Like, why else would you want to watch gross, sweaty middle school boys roll around on a germ infected dusty mat and with like their butts in each other's faces,
Because for
and
real,
noses and armpits, and that's what I think about with wrestling.
And middle schoolers, they have a different smell, right? Like men smell like men, but then middle school, ooh.
Yeah, because I have a middle school boy.
And then how's this? Did you still have a crush on him after you saw him in that uniform? Like, no, thank you, I'm good.
No, I think I did. I don't think it bothered me then. I mean, nothing ever transpired, but
Oh my gosh.
I know. Well, that's what we think about when we think of the word wrestle. But in Genesis 32, we've got this really cool story of Jacob wrestling with an angel of God. And I love that image. And I have clung to that a lot of times in my life as I go through challenging times or trials, or situations that I can't seem to overcome, a bad habit or trait or sin nature, and I just feel like I have to get down in the mud and like just wrestle it out with God. Like we're just having to fight it out.
Like you're clinging to something and he's trying to take it away from you?
Sometimes it's that, but usually it is because I am trying so hard to get him to help me get past something that I cannot do on my own. But it's just not one of those regular, like it's something deep, or for example, when we had a financial downturn and our finances were really low, and it got really scary, and we gave up everything. We gave up our new house, we sold our cars and got old ones. I didn't have a housekeeper anymore, like all these like spoiled brat things, it sounds like, right? But all these things, there was no more Starbucks in my life. I mean, every penny had to be counted. It was very stressful, and I was shocked at how angry I was at God that I didn't have those things anymore, because I did not think that all those things mattered to me as much as they did until they were taken away. And I was angry, and that made me upset. And so I was trying to get my heart right with God, and I am telling you, it just felt like this constant going to God in prayer, letting him just dig through and sift through all these emotions and just rip these idols. It felt like they had to be ripped out of my grasp. And I think wrestling plays an important role, such an important role in our spiritual growth. And it's not wrestling because we want to beat him like those middle school wrestlers or those WW whatever guys. But we're not trying to get him to follow our plan, but we're wrestling with him because we want more of him in our hearts and we want his blessing.
But do you think that when you're wrestling with God that you know that that's what you want, or do you think at the end you're like, oh, that's what I needed?
Well, I think it depends on the person and the situation. Like for me, that's why I was wrestling with God. I needed him. I was ashamed of the grip that these things had on my life, and but I still wanted them.
Right.
It's like, but I still want all those creature comforts back. And it's like, why? And so it was like this internal battle with myself that I knew only God could help me work through. And so, I think sometimes, if you're close with the Lord, you're going to Him for that help and assistance, but it's not easy. I mean, think about our children when they want our help.
Yeah.
Oh, that doesn't always go over. I mean, we love them to pieces, right?
Right.
And they come to us for help, and like my daughter, she'll like start screaming at me. I'm like, wait a minute, whoa, what? I'm trying to help you.
Right.
Like, why are you yelling at me? I'm your friend. I'm like, I'm helping you right now. And you're just angry. Like she's angry at herself, or she's angry at the situation. And she's coming to me and she feels safe with me.
I gotcha. Okay.
Because she knows I love her no matter what. And so she can throw all that garbage, all those emotions, all that anger, all that frustration. She can throw all that at me. And we can wrestle it out. And sometimes we do have to scream it out,
right.
But it helps her work through it. And that's what we can do with God. That's that wrestling with Him. I think a lot of times people are afraid that God can't handle their anger at Him. Sometimes it's anger at Him or something that's happened to them. Something bad that's happened to them, like we talked about last week. Bad things that happen to good people. It just depends. But He can handle it.
Right.
He can handle it all. And He already knows it. He already knows what's in our hearts. Like, that's the irony of it all.
Right.
He already knows. Like, well, you think you're hiding it from Him or something? Like, dude, just talk it out. It's like being in the kitchen with your husband and he's like, you're not saying anything to him, and he's like, what's wrong? You're like, nothing. Well, I know something's wrong. No, I'm fine. No, really, what's wrong? Nothing. I told you nothing.
Everything's great.
Everything's fine.
Yeah.
Here, sit down, have some dinner.
Like,
obviously, your husband knows that something is not right.
Right, now God knows.
God knows
the exact thing.
Exactly.
I got you.
Ain't no surprises.
Yeah, I guess it reminds me of kind of like my whole trip to Texas. I call it the trip because that's what it was. We moved to Texas, back in 2015. I was working at the church. And I loved my job. And a matter of fact, like 1 month before this whole thing came down, I said out loud, man, I love my job so much. I just took a new position at the job, or at the church, and I said, I love my job so much. And when those words came out of my mouth, I knew that I should remember that moment. I don't know why. I didn't know why, right? And shortly thereafter, my husband decided he was going to make a job change, and at this time, I was working really hard on honoring my husband and, building him up and encouraging him. And he started to feel good about himself, which he should, right? He's a great guy, and I did such a great job building him up that
whoops.
Whoa, take that back.
Psych.
Yeah,
just drinking.
He was like, I'm going to go and interview for a company in Texas. Now, we live in North Carolina at the time. And I was like, oh, well, okay. My face said okay, but my internal dialogue was like, what? What do you think you're doing? Texas? Like, I'm not good at geography. I'm not even sure where that is on the map. I mean, it's down in North Florida, so it's close to Dad. Not really, but in my mind I was. So, I remember going up to my room and like saying, God, what on earth are you doing? You did not. Like, here I am doing what you asked me to do. Honor your husband, blah, blah, blah. And then he's going to come back and say he's going to interview in Texas. Oh, okay. And so God's like, just let him go. And so I said it to my husband. I was like, oh, babe, go ahead and go. You'll know right then and there if you like it or not. But in my mind, I was thinking he's going to hate it.
He's going to hate it.
Right, because God's on my
God's
side.
on my side.
And so-
I feel you. I feel
Yes.
you.
And so then he went for the interview, and we didn't have a chance to talk. I think he spent the night, obviously, down there, and we never talked. We didn't talk for like a day and a half or 2 days about it. And I thought, well, he must have hated it because he didn't mention it. So, ha ha, you know what I mean?
I
won. And then he said, babe, I think I want to do it. And I remember sitting there like someone had just kicked me in the stomach and took all the breath out of my lungs. And I was like, well, you go right on ahead, because the kids and I will be right here, and you can fly back and forth and see us. Like, hello, Melissa.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep my job because I work for the Lord. Girl, I did say that too.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, it didn't work out. I ended up moving to Texas shortly thereafter.
But when you were in Texas, it was lonely, right? I mean, and you and God had to wrestle some things out on your bench, if I remember.
Girl, I was so mad at him. I was like, God, and you know what I was mad about? I was mad at what he had done with my life. Like, God, you created this mess of a person. Like, what were you thinking when you made me? Hello.
Oh.
And I was mad at him, and I kind of rebellious, and I talked to him like, you should never talk to your parent, and definitely not to God. So
See, you were wrestling it out with him, and
Yeah.
you didn't even know there was like a word for that. Or street fighting. I
yeah,
love what my friend Lauren says. I mean, she's like, girl, we are not even wrestling. I am street fighting with him right now.
yeah, and but that
Trying
comes
to
with the
figure
term, like,
things out.
I didn't know that that's what I
Yeah.
wanted was more of God, or needed more of God.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know I was quote unquote, like you said, wrestling with God. I was just telling him about himself.
Right.
Like, what were you thinking?
And sometimes it's like counseling, right? We just have to get it off our chest.
Yeah.
We gotta tell them what we think, right? And then, and then apologize for it, just like we do with other people. And so I once read that doubt does not cancel faith. There may be times when we doubt, and that it will hold us back from God. Like when we doubt what He's doing in our lives, or we doubt that He's in the middle of these things and that He loves us. But there's a process and a tension to faith and doubt that kind of works together. And I loved that.
Yeah, this is going to be a weird thing I'm going to throw at you. Ignorance is bliss, right? So if
Mhm.
I just go along with what the world says and just jump in line,
Yeah.
I can put my blinders on and just like skip to the songs and
Uh-huh.
say God is good. But the true, honest to goodness change in your heart happens when you doubt it and bring it to God.
That's exactly right. And you say it out loud to Him.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And you're right. We can just skip along and say the right things with that doubt in our hearts. And I think the doubt scares us because it feels bad or wrong, and that, we feel like, oh, I shouldn't be thinking that. But it's okay. There is not one person, I believe, that has never experienced doubt. I don't care if you're a pastor, I don't care who you are. If you're honest with yourself, there is not one person, a Christian, that has never gone their whole faith walk and not had some doubt in some way. But God can handle it. And It's
Right.
like, just say it. Just like, hey man, what's the deal with this? Like sometimes, and you're right about just ignorance is bliss. Because I'll even say to people when they say, well, how are you? I'm like, well, I'm good. And if you know anything different, don't tell me. If I'm not good, don't let me know, because I'm fine right now.
Right.
Like I'm just doing my thing, so don't let me know if there's anything I should be worried about, because I'm
Yeah.
fine. Like don't mess up my little ecosystem. But that doesn't get us anywhere.
Right.
We cannot stay in that little place of imaginary, fake,
Yeah.
robotic. Right. we do not grow in our faith. We do not grow in our trust, and nothing moves.
That would be Pleasantville, right?
Pleasantville, yes.
So I will say this: if you have never wrestled with God, or I don't want to say the word wrestle with God if you think that's too Chinese. If you've never fought it out with God, if you've never
Been honest.
Yeah. Throwing your hands in the air and be like, God, what is wrong with you? I've said that. Sorry, God. Maybe you are playing it safe.
Yep.
I do think that.
Preach, girl.
Yeah. I mean, you're playing it too safe, and you're just pretending, and you're not really committed to digging in with God.
I'll tell you what, one thing, it deepens your relationship and your friendship with God when you're honest with him, because he already knows it. But when you say it and you're like, because there have been times, where I have this great plan. I have a lot of good plans. And, I like to make a plan.
I know you do, girl. Lists and plans.
Real type A. I like to be in my illusion of control over here.
It's all an illusion.
It is. It totally is. Control is a complete illusion. But I like to just go with it sometimes. But I'll say to God, I'm like, God, I don't think that your plan is better than mine. Like, I have this really good, I see what you're trying to do over here, but I think my plan is good. Like, this is a really good plan. We should stick with this plan. And, of course, I'm not going to go with my plan over God's, because I've done that too many times in my life, and I know where it ends, but I will still say it out loud to him, or in my prayers or whatever. Like, but this is a good plan. Why do I have to change it? And you know what? That's okay. I used to be afraid to say that.
Right.
But he can handle it. And it's good for me to say it out loud, but then relinquish it to him.
Because you're admitting it,
I'm admitting it, right. It's good therapy. It's good. It's like counseling.
Girl, counseling. You guys.
Bring it.
I'm a big fan of counseling.
Heck yeah, man. Get some. Everybody needs a good counselor.
Go get you some, girl. Here's the other thing. Wrestling with God for somebody else. That doesn't happen. It doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Like, you'll be wrestling forever.
Not your job.
That's not your fight, man.
Nope. Mm-mm. That's right.
And I think, a situation in my life where I wrestled with God for a long time about this. And I probably still do on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized, that's not in my circle. Like, that's nothing I can control. God can control if he wants to, but God gives free will, and guess what? It's not my will. It's the other person's will.
That is such a great point, because I think we can definitely get caught up in fighting other people's battles with God.
Yeah.
But the battle that we can fight is within our own hearts of letting that person go. Oh. That you can fight.
Yep.
God, help me let this person go. You love them more than I do.
Yeah.
You have a plan for them. Help me to trust your plan. I don't see it. It's not moving fast enough for me. Get on it.
Right.
Right. But you take it from me, because I know it's not my responsibility. So we can wrestle in that regard and trying to relinquish ourselves from that responsibility. But definitely we cannot battle for other people.
Yeah, I do remember having to say out loud, probably more than once a day, you love him more than I do, God.
Yep.
There's nothing I can do but give him to you.
It's the truth.
And I think that was, not for God, he knew that, but that was for me to continue to remind myself, God loves him more than I do. All the love I have for this person, God loves him more.
When I start to make my children idols, worry about them too much, that sort of thing, that is the prayer that I have. I always say, Lord, thank you for blessing me with my 2 children. I know that they are on loan from you to me. Thank you for entrusting them to me. Help me to do the right thing. I know that you love them more than I do, and you've got their back. And yes, like you said, he already knows all that. But for me to remind myself, hey, these kids, they're actually on loan.
Yeah.
They're not yours. And he loves them more than you do. As crazy as it sounds. But it helps put things into perspective.
Yeah.
So send us your stories. Send us your stories about how you have been out there wrestling with God. You may not have even realized you've been wrestling.
Yeah.
Right there in the middle of a match, and you didn't even know. We'd love to hear your stories.
All right. See you next week.
See you next week on The Sinner and the Saint.